as it's called. And so I'm pleased to speak with one of those now. Henry Dees is the sketch writer for the Daily Mail. The headline of his piece today, eyes frozen, cranium pulsating, he, as in Ra, was hoisted by his own petard. But Henry makes use of the point we played, which was Tom Tugendhat's airing of a report made as recently as July, which, as Henry says, was almost like a legal twist. He joins me now to explain. Why was that the moment you picked for your intro, Henry? Good morning.
Morning, Nick. Well, that was about as close as we came to a sort of gotcha moment, I suppose, when the chairman, Tom Tugendhat, mentioned this report, which of course brought into question why on earth Dominic Raab had gone on this holiday in August when it was quite clear even his own Foreign Office was telling him all hell was about to break loose.
How did he, as you write in your column, by the way, he's probably going to have a happier time in Pakistan or Islamabad or wherever he ends up. How did he emerge from it, Henry?
It wasn't great. Underwhelming is probably about the kindest thing you could say about it. He was tetchy, evasive, failed to answer some pretty important questions. However, I think his supporters will try and maintain that there was no sort of knockout moment. But it was, for nearly 2 hours, it was a pretty uncomfortable time for him.
Your take on the approach or tack taken by SNP Stuart McDonald, did he go over the top with a two-footed tackle and earn a red card, or was it about right?
I think it was one of those sessions where I think everything was on the table. I think it was I think it was about right, and I think the way that Dominic Raab still refused to answer any questions about when he went on this holiday, it just made him look petulant, to be honest.
In your view, is he now effectively a dead man walking?
Well, in some ways I can see why people would think that. I think what's probably going to be a saving grace if he has one is Boris Johnson is so reluctant to ever present a scalp to the press whenever, these things happen. So it wouldn't entirely surprise me if he's still there in a month's time.
And lastly, on the whole proceedings, your view of Tom Tugendhat, you, as I mentioned right at the top of your piece in the intro, you have that piece of almost legal theatre that you reference, but you're not a whole fully paid up fan of Tom at the moment.
No, he's an Afghan veteran himself. He's felt this crisis, emotionally, which is quite understandable. I just felt yesterday there was a little bit of, sort of machismo going on. There was a competition going with Raab over who was the sort of more senior statesman. I think Tom has to be sort of slightly careful. He might need to rein in it a little bit. He's at risk of looking a bit of a show off at times.
Henry's sketches in today's Daily Mail. Henry Dees, thank you, your sketch writer and columnist. Eyes frozen, cranium pulsating. He, Dominic Raab, was hoisted by his own petard. And now, of course, over to you. There are so many issues. You could go on with about a dozen, which is quite a lot to take on this time of the morning. So let's just pick up with 2 or 3. Why would it appear, and credit to the SNP MP Stuart McDonald, 9 times he asked when his holiday started. The sense is, and I think we can say this because Mr. Raab, I remember I was asking him other matters, but he went off to Crete 2 weeks after reading a memo suggesting that Afghan was about to collapse. Now, as he and I have clashed before, and he says that, of course, he doesn't have the luxury of armchair commentators such as me, which is fair comment, I get that. But can I assure you, in the unlikely event that I have been Foreign Secretary, God knows this country has suffered enough without that, there is no way on earth you go on holiday with something as big as that. You just can't. It is irresponsible. Also, as we discovered, the most senior diplomat in that Foreign Office was on holiday at the same time. If you're listening now and you're a copper, or you're the wife or husband of a copper or partner of a three of us were on the same beat once, the sort of pop beat, as it were. Martin, a great distinction for a newspaper called Today. Piers was on the Mirror and I was on the Sun. So there was sometimes sleeves were rolled up, got a bit ugly, but we all move on and forget, hopefully. To move to other matters, and we're all going to move on and get a third jab. It would appear up to 500,000 sick Brits will be offered a top-up COVID jab after experts warned their first 2 doses might not work. Only the immunosuppressed will get a third shot, meaning millions of older people continue to wait for a booster. Meanwhile, Conservative Jeremy Hunt, also remind me, he is former health secretary, was health secretary, must get on with the jabs for everyone. Sally Jane Cutler is Professor in Medical Microbiology at the University of East London. If you had complete open field on this, Professor, would you want to get everybody who needed it, or do you think those who are most at risk is an acceptable path to follow? Good morning.
Good morning. I think you have to have some kind of structure and to actually prioritise giving this booster shot to those people who are the most vulnerable, those people who are struggling to respond and get any protection from the vaccines. And this is particularly your immunocompromised group. So I would actually agree and put those as my priority number one, to actually give this booster shot, because their immune system is less able to respond and give that protection to the vaccine. And so basically they're the most vulnerable group within our population. And I think we really need to make sure that we've done that duty of care for that group first. And they're the ones that are most likely to end up getting very sick, being hospitalised, and also the individuals that might actually have a prolonged infection because they're less able to clear it because of their sort of slightly non-functioning immune system. And so this means that they might have a prolonged infection, which means that you could actually have new escape variants being generated in prolonged infections, which would actually be bad news for the whole population.
I know comparisons with other countries can, Professor, be somewhat invidious. We should have done what Australia did, we should have done what Sweden did, look what Italy's done, or whatever. But in Israel, they are now they're now encouraging all over 30s get booster jabs. Ultimately, do you imagine that's something we could see in the UK?
I think they've gone beyond that. They're actually actively immunising all of their over 12s. So
yeah, I meant the boosters. So you would look at the over 12s here in the UK, would you, Professor?
Maybe they would be at the bottom of my list at the moment, because you have to do with this risk benefits, and the risk of somebody in that age category being hospitalised and being seriously ill following infection is much smaller than it is in the older age groups. But I think we're going to be looking at sort of boosters going on for years to come, because the immunity doesn't seem to be sort of one shot and you've got lifelong immunity. It does seem to be waning, and so you can compare really with flu really as well, because there you need to have boosters every year to give you that good robust protection. And we might be having a similar situation going on with COVID-19 as well.
Thank you, Professor. We'll leave it there. Sally Jane Cutler, Professor in Medical Microbiology at the University of East London. Thank you for your input. Coming up after the news, more of your views on Dominic Raab. There's not a lot of love in the room for him. Piers Morgan, we're going to be talking about that later. A lot of reactions coming in on that, so we'll be sure to take your views. In other stories,
the country's oldest synagogue faces an existential threat. But where is it, and what's worrying the local rabbi? I'm LBC's Theo Usherwood with the story.
That report will be after this. You're listening to Breakfast with me, Nick Ferrari, on LBC. The time is 7:30. The news is with Thomas Watts.
Dominic Raab is in Qatar for talks about the situation in Afghanistan with neighbouring countries. Officials say the Foreign Secretary's top priority is the safe evacuation of remaining British nationals and Afghan interpreters. 2 health groups have warned NHS services in England will have to be cut unless its budget is raised. The NHS Confederation and NHS providers say next year's funding package needs to be increased by £10 billion. A state of emergency has been declared in New York City because of record-breaking rain. The remnants of Hurricane Ida are also sweeping through New Jersey and Connecticut. The weather a dry and cloudy day for most parts of the UK. Sunny spells in northern areas later, a high of 21 Celsius.
This is LBC. Nothing. We're told it's not a good choice. Can't choose what present to get? How about nothing? Or what to call your newborn child? No, nothing doesn't go down well. Until Simply find a table, order, and we'll do the rest. Table service is to participating restaurants only. Visit the McDonald's website for a list of available restaurants.
The Admiral and Mrs. Taylor set out on a lovely picnic in a hot air balloon. But things didn't go to plan.
Pesky seagulls, they ruined everything.
I know.
They not only wrecked my son's car with my roast chicken, but they also demolished Mum's chimney and her garden.
But you saved the day with Admiral Multicover.
Mrs. Taylor insured her family cars and homes, all at different addresses, on a single multi-cover policy. Admiral Multicover. Rewardingly simple.
The Sky Broadband sale is now on. Get super reliable, super fast broadband at just £28 a month for 18 months with a 1995 setup. Plus, we'll also give you 3 months boost on us, so you get guaranteed Wi-Fi in every room of your home or money back. Be quick, this offer is for a limited time only, for new and existing customers. Search Sky Broadband today. Ends 9th September, £33 per month after month 3. Money back on boost paid up to date of claim. Separate 18-month contracts, prices may vary. See sky.com.
Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
With the British Airways American Express Accelerating Business Card. Earn Avios while you spend.
7:34. Back to your views of Dominic Raab. It's safe to say that if you were judge, jury, and executioner, that man's career would be over. He wouldn't need to worry whether the sea was closed or not. He could spend the rest of his days, it would appear, on the Sun Lounge. I'll have more reviews on that in a moment, as I say. Let's get into what a business walkers do around this time. Morning, David Gupta is on a week off. I'm sure, of course, you'll look at it later, won't we? So let's welcome to the plate Susanna Streeter, who's senior markets commentator at Hargreaves Lansdown. And Susanna, I know the Financial Times is very excited about the new, and quite rightly so, the new chief economist at the Bank of England, Hugh Pill. They call him a hawk. A little bit on his background. And what does that mean in financial terms? Susanna, good morning.
Good morning. Yes, lots of excitement in the business pages about the appointment of Hugh Pill, who's a Goldman Sachs veteran. A few eyebrows raised there because certainly there's quite a few former Goldman Sachs senior officials now at the Bank of England. So he's a hawk. Well, that means he has a more conventional viewpoint of monetary policy, in particular about the bank's mass bond buying spree that this central bank and also others around the world have been on to help economies survive the financial crisis. He believes there should be real limits set so that economies aren't addicted to this drug of cheap money. So that's likely to be his standpoint when